Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today for a short introduction to positive behavior supports and how it can help you to better support your family member, the person you're caring for with an intellectual or developmental disability. And actually, all these techniques work for all humans. So, this may help you with other relationships in your life. Um, some of you are watching because this is a required component for people that are going to be providers in our RAP program for Arch Respite. If that's you, make sure you take the knowledge check at the end of the presentation. That will be sent to the St. Louis ARC, and we will record your answers so that we can get you on our list to provide that level of support. I'm going to give a quick introduction. My name is Sharon Spurlock. I'm the Senior Director of Family Education at the St. Louis ARC. I've been here for many, many years and have provided supports on our due process committee and taught positive behavior supports for decades to some of our employees to make sure that we are understanding why people do what they do and offering them good alternatives to learn new skills. With me today is John Kelly. Hi, John.
I'm John Kelly. I'm a behavior analyst working at the St. Louis Arc.
All right, then let's just jump right into it. I want to start off talking about the why, because I think sometimes we think people are just being difficult, just being lazy, being confrontational, but all of us do things because our actions, that's what a behavior is any action that you can see. Those actions are providing us with something. And so that's what we call the function of behavior. Anything we do is meeting a need that we have. And that need might be addressed with a behavior that doesn't seem great to the rest of us, but it is working for that person. So we're going to spend some time talking about the why in this presentation. So here's the needs that typically are being met by our actions. We might want to escape something. We might want attention from someone. We might just want stuff. Maybe we want something to drink, or we want our favorite toy or whatever. But tangibles are very powerful things that need to be met. And then for some people, there are sensory needs that they have. Even in either a need to get more sensory input or less can cause us to engage in certain behaviors. So we're going to start off talking about escape. And so think about where you are with people. Are they trying to escape an activity they don't like? Maybe you've taken them into Walmart and there's a million sounds and a lot of people and it's really stressful. Maybe they just don't want that salad you put in front of them, or they don't want to be with Aunt Susie. So, in order to avoid those things, there's things that we can do. We can sit on the floor and refuse to go inside a store. We can throw our food on the floor, and then that way we don't have to eat what's been given to us. So, those are some of the ways you might see a behavior that helps someone to escape. What we want to do is help people develop the skills they need so that if they need to escape something, they have a tool. And sometimes you can't escape things. There's things that need to happen. So we'll talk about that as well. So the first thing to think about is the activity necessary or important? You know, maybe you're taking somebody to drop off dry cleaning and they don't really need to go in there. It's not an important part of their life, as opposed to going into the dentist office and getting a dental exam. So there's something for us to think about. Why are we going into this place? Does it even need to happen? How can that person communicate either no, I don't want this, or I need to go in another way? Often we forget that language skills are sometimes limited with the people that we're supporting, and sometimes language becomes harder for all of us to use the more upset we are. So making sure that people have a way to communicate what they're experiencing and what they need is really important. You know, a really simple trick that people have used for a long, long time is to offer preferred items and activities after the less preferred. So maybe after you go to the dentist, we're going to stop and pick up a new video game because it's something that you did and you did a great job, and now we're going to reward that. It's sort of like telling people that they have to eat all the vegetables on their plate before they can have dessert. So if you scaffold a day like that, making sure knowing that something's going to come up that maybe is less than desirable for the person, hold on to an activity that's going to be really fun and place that afterwards so that you've got something for that person to look forward to. And then finally, use a social story to prepare. Social stories are something that were developed for people with autism, but I think most people really find value in having information about what they can expect. For example, when I go to a busy airport in another city, I don't know where everything is. I find it really, really stressful. A social story is going to give you information about what it's going to look like, what it might sound like, what you are expected to do in that space, and it really helps people. And you can find lots of social stories online to help with almost any kind of experience. John, is there anything you want to add here?
I think the only thing I would kind of add at this point, planting a seed that I think we're going to revisit throughout this presentation. But when we're talking about teaching a way for someone to communicate, no, I don't want to do that, or hey, I'm ready to leave, we want to try to find that alternative way for them to get their needs and wants met. We want it to work as quick and as easy as possible for the person. And I think sometimes that's a point where people get kind of stuck in these situations. We want to set that bar for doing the safer or more appropriate kind of communication to get those needs met as low as possible so someone has this like clear, easy path to take instead of what might be a more challenging, like a more effortful or a more time intensive kind of disruptive or challenging behavior. So when we're thinking through those things, we want to lay out those two paths. The one the person's learning history has already kind of led them down, which ends in these challenging behaviors. And we want that clear, easy new path as simply as possible for the person to get their needs met in that safe way. Um, and then the other thing I would mention is when we're talking about, you talked about what is sometimes called grandma's law, right? Like first eat your vegetables, then have dessert.
Mhm.
Um, Another thing we can do other than finding that preferred thing and setting it after the fact is we can find other preferred things that maybe we can weave throughout the activity, right? So instead of this light at the end of the tunnel, grandma's law approach, we can kind of smooth some of those rough edges about the whole experience, right? I'm far more likely to clean up around my house if I am listening to music at the same time, right? Simple things like that that we can pepper throughout someone's day.
I love that. That's such a great example. And one of the things that John and I will talk about multiple times is that you don't want to set up a situation that's going to compromise your relationship with the person. So when you think about grandma's law, I bet you there were times where you crossed your arms and said, "To heck with you, I'm not going to eat that food, even if it means I don't get dessert," and kind of set up a power struggle. And we don't want that for you or for the person that you're supporting. All right. So the next scenario is attention. And attention means I want you to connect with me. Even if it's the only way for me to get that is to engage in a negative situation, your attention is what I need. So attention, I think, is a very universal need for people. We want to make sure that we are understanding what people's individual needs for attention are and plan for regular opportunities to connect. I may need attention from you every 10 minutes, and it'd be great if you could stretch that out farther. But you need to kind of step in and at least acknowledge me every 10 minutes, give me a smile, keep me moving forward so I don't have to engage in something that's going to be less desirable to get what my needs met. As John mentioned, we want people to get their needs met. When you are giving attention, look for positive behaviors that you want to increase. Make sure you're pointing out that somebody is sitting and doing their homework quietly, or that they just managed to take a deep breath instead of getting upset about something. Those are really great things to reward with attention. If somebody's seeking attention anyway, we want to kind of build it into an opportunity to let people know when things are are going great. And I use the word ignore negative behavior here. And John's probably going to talk a little bit about that because we don't want you to ignore the person. That's never a healthy thing to do. But when you engage with them, if they're doing something that you really, really don't want them to do, make it less attention driven, less eye contact. Don't talk to them. Take care of what needs to be taken care of, but don't give that rewarding feedback of eye contact or talk. And then before John jumps in, I'll just say, if you know that you need to take a phone call, you need to do something else, just take a minute before you go to do that and spend some time with that person. And maybe there's something that you need to do, like doing the dishes. Maybe they will want to do the dishes with you because they get your attention at that time. I had a dad realize that that was what his daughter wanted, and they developed a dishwashing schedule together, and it worked out great because he got help for the dishes. She learned a great skill, and they bonded over that time.
Couple of quick things I will talk through. I think attention attention gets tricky sometimes because we presume that people like, well, I didn't give positive attention to that challenging behavior, right? I told them to stop. I told them why I needed them to stop, right? Like, oh, that's not safe, and that's if we want to be invited back here, we want to make sure that we're on our best behavior, right? Those things that there's nothing inherently wrong with, right? Like it seems like the right thing to do in that moment to tell somebody what they need to do different, give an explanation of the reason why, right? Those things that make sense in a lot of different circumstances sometimes don't make the most sense if what someone finds valuable about engaging in that behavior in the moment is attention, because it might just be any kind of attention is better than none, right? Or it might be that even if even if Sharon's not talking to me super positively right now, she's talking to me and I feel dysregulated, and I would rather have someone here with me in this moment than be here by myself, right? Even if Sharon's telling me, like, John, that's probably not the best idea. Like, I'd recommend something different. At least I got someone there with me. There's more attention than I was potentially receiving before, even if it is more reprimand or corrective type feedback. So, when you're paying attention to the person you're supporting, and taking that valuable information that you know about them already, if they are someone who seems more attention seeking or finds more value and attention in certain moments rather than others, sometimes it can be helpful to just err on the side of caution. And if something challenging is happening, something that we don't want to see continue in the future, erring on the side of the least amount of attention possible, right? We can save that kind of teaching opportunities where we're talking about what not to do, what to do instead, and those reasons why. Save those for once the behavior's finished. Speaking personally, I'm better able to talk through those things if I'm not also a little bit on edge because I'm supporting somebody in something that's challenging for them, right? I'm going to be better equipped to talk about those things, and they're going to be better equipped and ready and able to listen to it. And then we don't run that risk of I accidentally gave attention somewhere that made something more valuable than I wanted to.
That idea of not giving a lot of attention during a negative behavior, that doesn't have to go on for a long period of time. If you are creative and clever, you can pivot that person towards something more positive, and as soon as they make a move towards anything that is a positive replacement for what they're doing, jump on it and then bring your attention in. You can kind of shape that behavior towards what you're looking for.
So that is what I was going to talk about later. The one, which I love that we landed at the same place with it. The one thing I will add to that, that's where the kind of ignore the behavior, but not the person comes into play,
Mm.
right? Least amount of attention possible for the thing that is being done, right? I'm not going to talk about what is happening that I don't want to see happen more in the future, but I am going to be there for that person, and I can queue up those kind of safer things that they could be doing instead, or quicker ways to get their needs met, right? These challenging behaviors might not be safety related. It might just be, man, your life is going to go smoother and you're going to be happier if I help you get in contact with what you're looking for this more direct way rather than the kind of challenging behavior path we're taking that winds around.
All right, tangibles. I'm gonna let John talk about this a little bit more than I do because stuff. This is such a challenging thing. If somebody really wants to be on their electronics, if they are, obsessed about something with a favorite toy or a food or drink, it can be really hard to figure out how to divert them from that. And if you take it away or you don't give them access, then you're going to see problems. So one thing you can do is make sure they know how to ask for what they want. They don't have to get upset before you give them the stuffed animal they like. All they have to do is ask for the stuffed animal. So sometimes it's as simple as building communication skills. Provide clear expectation and boundaries. If the person is going to be able to use their electronics device in 20 minutes after they take care of something else, let them know it's coming around the corner, but right now we're going to do this other thing. Offer choices, other choices that might meet the person's need, or choices that work in the moment, and redirect them. Reinforce all the positive things that you're seeing. And then something that I think John will go into depth about is, what is it about these tangibles? Is this something that is really meeting an internal emotional need that that person's having that maybe we can help address and shift to another thing?
Tangibles gives us a good opportunity to kind of talk through something that's universal with any of these attempts to try to change behavior, right? Like these trying to teach somebody a new skill to use instead of the skills that are more challenging, that are already a part of their repertoire in their everyday life. No matter what the function of the behavior is, when we were talking about attention earlier or anything else, that change is going to take time. And I think with tangibles, there's some relief in knowing that the change will take time, because of how attached people may be to the things in their environment. Sharon mentioning electronics, right? That's such a, it provides so much and kind of sinks hooks in people in such a wide variety of ways that it can be something really difficult to put down or walk away from, right? Additionally, this tangible category includes some of those like food and drink type things fall into tangibles, right? It's not attention, it's not escaping or delaying something, but it's something physical in the environment that somebody wants. And we all know how multifaceted food and access to specific types of food, depending on how we're feeling or how our day has been going or how our habits have looked in the past, right? Changing any of those things, I think we can all understand how highly disruptive that might be for someone's life. And a key to finding success is knowing that no matter what, this is going to take time. So I can set my kind of goals here as small as I need to, right? This is really an opportunity to meet the person where they are. And if we're wanting to decrease time on some electronics, or hey, we've got like, if we keep eating snacks the way we're eating snacks, we're gonna go broke, right? Or our doctor is telling us we need to cut down on this specific type of very highly preferred snack, right? Going from 0 to 60 is going to throw anybody for a loop, right? It's going to be confusing. But knowing that, we're going to have more success if instead of setting the bar too high for someone to clear and then never being able to celebrate that win with them, if we start just a notch above where they are right now and decide to celebrate and provide that positive praise to someone for like having more time in between snacks, for putting down the iPad quicker when it's time for us to walk through the parking lot and we need to be looking and paying attention, right? If we set it right above where they currently are, then they're going to be able to find that success, celebrate it with us, and that's going to set them up to continue on those step stones up towards the ultimate goal where we want to be. Um, and all the things Sharon talked about earlier play a role in that, right? Clear expectations, um, clear boundaries. A lot of times we can add visual kind of components to what we're talking about that might make it more understandable for someone what the expectation is or when they can expect to get that thing back, right? If this is something I really, really like, give me give me the reminder that this is just temporary, that I'm setting it down, right? Hey, we just don't look at your screen while we are trying to cross the street and walk to the car, right? As soon as we're there and we're safe and it's good, access to this tangible item is back on in full force, right? Making those things as clear and direct as we can, um, offering choices can really get you out of some sticky situations, right? The simply asking someone, "Hey, we're getting ready to leave. Do you want to put your iPad away in 5 minutes or 10 minutes?" Right? Somebody having the option to choose between those things works so much differently than us telling them, "Hey, in 5 minutes, we're putting the iPad up," right? So offering those choices.
I just want to reiterate, I really like that you brought up the idea of some visuals. A high percentage of us are visual learners, especially high percentage of people with disabilities are visual learners. So if we're just telling people things, that is not always going to be effective. So being able to have a calendar or a timer or some other reminder that time is passing. Time is also a really abstract concept for a lot of people. I love that idea, and I think it's really important to build that into your strategies.
alongside those kind of alongside those kind of visual supports, we can also schedule kind of routine times in a day for someone to access something that they really, really enjoy, right? This is a strategy that can also work with attention, right? But if we know someone really, really, really desires something, whether that's our attention and having a specific type of joking around fun, or it's a particular, like, I really love Skittles, right? Like, we can try to kind of spread those things throughout someone's day in like smaller doses so that maybe they become a bit more satiated with it, right? If I'm getting positive joking around attention with you throughout the day, then maybe when my brother and sister come home from school and now I'm worried about competing with them for your attention, well, I'm half full already, right? I was snacking and grazing on attention all day. Now that need's not as strong for me to kind of go for it right now. That might be something that can be used effectively with tangibles too, right? Hey, we've got regular screen time scheduled, top of the hour, every hour. We're doing 5 minutes, 5 minutes screen time, then maybe it's less valuable that when they do get that iPad, they're wanting to spend an extended amount of time with it. It's interfering with them being able to do other things and engage with other parts of their life.
And as you began talking earlier, I really kind of started to think about this whole idea of what needs are being met. And I think sometimes we think tangibles really are just stuff. But when you think about what you're getting out of that food or drink or that stuffed animal or that cell phone, whatever it is, it often is tapping into those other things. You're escaping from a pretty challenging social environment that you're having to navigate. You are getting comfort if you're emotionally dysregulated. So I know you mentioned that already, but I just think for me that was a little bit of an aha while you were talking, that it's not just stuff, and we always need to remember that. And last but not least, our sensory needs. And I think this is something that, back in the dark ages when I started, we didn't really have a very good understanding of the sensory needs that people had. And I think that that's become more and more researched, more and more supported, and that we have a much better understanding that this is just a normal part of who people are, and that some people require more input than the rest of us to regulate. Some people need less input. If they don't get their needs met externally, they're going to figure out how to get their needs met internally. That can be everything from isolation, it could be putting things in your mouth, it could be pacing or jumping up and down. So all of those things are actually addressing an internal sensory need. And if that's happening for somebody, you can't take that away without having even more challenges occur. So making sure we understand what's happening for that person, that is physiologically and emotionally, when they're getting their needs met and when they're not getting them met. If they don't know how to take care of it, maybe an OT assessment is going to help figure out, how can I provide this person with the type of stimulation and sensory input that they need to be comfortable and successful. We want to make sure, like we just talked about with the snacks and grazing on tangibles, there might be a need for a schedule of sensory stimulation or sensory breaks, and help that person be able to understand how to ask for a break. I need to go to the quiet space right now, or I need my headphones. If you're going to have to really focus on something, making sure somebody has that sensory break prior to adding extra expectations on them. And then thinking about technology like headphones, like certain types of apps, those are things that can help people meet their sensory needs.
This is an area where if you have questions, reaching out for additional support can go really, really far. Like Sharon kind of talked about, the current understanding continues to grow on different types of sensory input, how they function for people, and new alternative ways to get those needs met in other ways. Um, and the only other thing I would mention in this category is sometimes we will also refer to the sensory category as automatic. Um, and the idea with that is what's valuable about the behavior is a sensation that happens automatically within the person's own body, right? So it's not attention from someone else. It's not accessing something physical in the environment or avoiding something non-preferred. Um, but so those sensory needs might be, I personally am a knuckle cracker, right? I'm not cracking my knuckles because someone comes by and tells me I did a really good job, right? There's no attention component. If I'm going into a meeting I don't want to go into, right? And I like crack my knuckles real hard beforehand. It's not like they're like, John, it seems like you got other stuff going on. Go ahead and skip this meeting. Like, we'll take it from here, right? Doesn't help me escape stuff. I don't get home at the end of my workday and tell my wife, hey, I cracked my knuckles 7 times and she gives me 7 Skittles, right? Like there's no tangible exchange for what I'm doing. I crack my knuckles just because the physical sensation within my body is something positive for me. Um, those, so it might not just be sensory input, but it might be a physical sensation within the person's own body, that makes the behavior valuable as well, right? So you think about that when people might engage in behaviors that like stimulate some like vestibular motion, right? People that like to spin or rocking, right? Those are those internal physical sensations, but it might also be related to something medical. And so sometimes when we're seeing especially big changes in behavior, that we haven't experienced before, and we don't have a change in attention or escape or tangibles, it's always a good idea to check out those medical things first, right? If someone's having tooth pain and they can't communicate that, they don't have the language to say like, hey, it's 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 a back tooth on this side of my mouth that is just making everything
Mm.
miserable for me right now, right? That communication might come across in a different, unexpected way. And like how Sharon started us off at the very beginning, when we're talking about these behaviors, we're not talking about someone being good or someone being bad, right? This isn't about somebody being lazy or just a difficult person, right? When we're looking at any behavior, understanding that it makes sense for the person based on their learning history, based on the environment they're in, and what has worked for them in similar environments in the past, right? That understanding takes it out of the good and the bad category. Keeping that in mind so that we don't see initial big changes in behavior with just like, oh, well, like this is this is an age where everybody is just a huge pain, right? Like, oh, they're in seventh grade. Everybody's a nightmare in seventh grade, right? Like, oh, these are the terrible twos, right? Like whatever kind of explanation we have broadly, culturally, understanding that for this person in that moment, we need to be looking at them as an individual. And part of that might be we see this big change instead of going to those, well, this is a bummer behavior. And so maybe they're just going through a period of life like that. No, let's rule out those medical needs and let's pay attention to the other things they're doing, right? Are they seeking sensory input or some sort of internal change in a safe way during other times of day or parts of their life? If so, can we bring those safer, more appropriate avenues for getting that need met throughout their day or during a more challenging part of the day?
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to you talked about your knuckle cracking. Knuckle cracking is probably something you're going to always do, but what we may need to do is to help figure out how to have knuckle cracking in the right environments and maybe refrain from knuckle cracking in certain environments where it would really be problematic, which is something we can do, but you can never take away some of these internal physical needs. So, here's what we're asking you to do. When something starts to happen, instead of saying stop, instead of saying don't do that, we want you to replace what that person's doing with some other tool. Teach them something. Teach them to communicate what they're feeling or what they need. Teach them to self soothe. Maybe they need a certain tangible or they need a breathing exercise or something else to help calm themselves down. Maybe building a routine so that people have expectations about what they need and what they want, what they can expect, and when they're going to receive the things that they prefer would help that person manage. And then build self-regulation skills. How do I manage it when I start to get upset? What are the tools in my toolkit so that I can safely manage my emotions?
Briefly re-mentioning that when we're looking for those replacement things to do, always keeping in mind that consistency, right? If we're teaching somebody that this is the path you need to take to get those needs met, we don't want it to only be open Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? Because that's going to leave everybody in a lurch on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Consistently available, working quick, being easy for the person, all of those things that make this the more appealing direction to take rather than something that, although it's challenging, has likely worked for me for every moment up until this one in my life, right? Or fighting up against a lot of history there. Making things as easy as possible gets us there quicker.
We've talked about wanting to replace these behaviors. You can make it even more desirable for that person if you reinforce the desired behavior that they're moving towards. If you reinforce, not only are they getting the natural reinforcement of being able to communicate what they want, but if we say to them, I'm so happy you were able to tell me you needed that, it builds on to that likelihood that they're going to do it again. So reinforcers should be meaningful to the person, but not the most important thing in their lives. We don't want to hold over people's head contact with some person that's really important to them or a really, really important tangible in their life and kind of say, this is only going to be available to you if you do what I need you to do. We want to do the smallest amount of reinforcement to get the desired behavior because otherwise the person will get bored or satiated with what we're doing and it won't work. And it's better to do a random schedule instead of giving it to somebody every time. That way, it's easier to pull back from having to give reinforcement over and over and over again. It's sort of like I like to describe that as the slot machine effect. You do pull that slot handle a lot of times because you know that the very next time might be the time that you get rewarded. And that's the way I like to think of reinforcement is that I'm going to give that to that person often enough that they feel good about it, but not so frequently that they know, oh boy, now I'm going to get this thing and I'm prepared for it. And the ideal reinforcer is a natural reinforcer. It's social supports. It's the natural feeling of satisfaction when you're able to get your needs met, those kinds of things.
When trying to stick with natural reinforcement, use your thinking about the function of the behavior to begin with as your guide there, right? The most naturally reinforcing thing in the world for an escape maintained behavior is getting the person away from the thing that they don't like. We used to have a challenging behavior that got me out of here. Now I've got this new thing. Well, the new thing, I hope it doesn't just get my favorite song played because I don't want my favorite song played right now, right? I want to get out of here. So if it's a challenging behavior that's about gaining additional attention, we have that replacement behavior and we want to reinforce that as much as possible with attention. That's what makes it that natural piece. Um, and then with the random scheduling, piggybacking off of what Sharon said, the slot machine is 100% accurate. And one way that we can try to gamify a little bit of the randomizing, whether like I want to reinforce, I want to reinforce Sharon for raising her hand before asking a question in class, right? Instead of giving that reinforcement every single time, like Sharon talked about, a way that we can make it more obvious and clear to the person that, like, hey, you did the thing that is valuable and will be celebrated for you, but now there's this element of chance. Roll a dice, flip a coin, right? You can do things that spread that reinforcement across, but still have a visual component so it's clearly understood for the person. And then it's less guesswork, right? We don't accidentally bump up against what Sharon was talking about earlier, where we've spread that reinforcement too thin, and now the person's not doing the thing that's valuable for them anymore, right? They've lost contact with that value and it fizzled out. Or that we're reinforcing it too heavy and it's just become stale, right? We hit that middle ground, but it's in a way where the person's not left guessing, but we've got some clear kind of parameters for them where it's like, hey man, you did that great thing 10 times while we were at the store, right? We walked by boxed cereal, which I know is your favorite, but we talked about wasn't a part of our budget for shopping this week, right? You walked past that 10 times. We get back to the car, that's 10 rolls of the dice, right? Anytime it's an even number. anytime it's a six, right? Whatever works for the person, but gamifying it a bit and making it real clear and obvious for them.
And one thing you said, I just want to clarify for people watching, you are rewarding the specific skill that they demonstrated. So it's best to tell them that exactly what they did. They walked by the cereal. If you say good job, that is so random. I may not have a clue as to what it was I did in the 25 minutes that I was in the store that was a good job. So the more specifically you can verbally reward me and praise me, the better it's going to be for repetition. We've tried to embed the idea of respect throughout this entire training. We're going to be really straightforward about it right now, is that the people that you are taking care of, the people that you are supporting, all have different needs, and we've got to be sure that we are respectful of those needs. People want to be included in things. They want to have control of as many choices as possible in their lives. If you have a playbook in your mind of what's going to be appropriate and acceptable, and it doesn't align with the person's needs, it's going to be really problematic. So try and be a little more flexible, perhaps, in what's okay. We used to try and stop people from jumping up and down, and frankly, who cares? Jump up and down. It's not really going to disrupt any other person. As long as it's not harmful to the person or anyone else, try and determine in your own mind if that's something that you can just let go of. And for goodness sakes, don't lose your sense of humor. Every time something happens, there's something that can be looked upon as something to smile about. So try and find that in every challenge that you face. And we know that we just hit the tip of the iceberg with this training. So we want you to know that there's lots of other informational things that are available. I'm going to talk about the two on the left and then let John close with the one on the right. We have a library at the St. Louis Arc, and there's some great books in there by Dave Higgensberger, who really was probably the person who pioneered the idea of really accepting a person where they are. His books are funny and also super informative in how to build your own skills at supporting people to learn new behaviors. There's a behavior supports resource collection at the Center for Parent Information and Resources. And John, tell us about what Missouri's offering.
So, through the Department of Mental Health, Missouri offers a curriculum called Tools of Choice, scientifically researched and validated as kind of just a far more robust version of what Sharon and I were talking about today. So, really getting into the details. In a series of classes offered by the state on kind of a rotating schedule, but it'll include introductions to understanding behavior that go a little bit deeper than what Sharon and I did, and then real carve out sessions on getting into the nitty gritty of everything, right? If Sharon and I did that kind of 10,000 foot view, this is really zoomed in. So if this whet your appetite a bit, or once you uh, start doing these things, you realize there's kind of more you're looking for, free resource available from the state, and a really kind of robust program. Uh, Gets a lot of great information in a pretty short amount of time.
Thank you, John. Thank you for joining us today. And I will say, if you're watching this and the dates on that flyer have changed, we're hoping this is going to be an ongoing opportunity. You can go to dmh.mo.gov and find the most current sessions that are available in the tiered supports training. Thanks for coming today. I hope that you are able to use this and make the relationship you have with the person you're supporting that much stronger, and help them to be even more amazing than they are today. Thank you.